Hello, welcome to another live episode of the League One show brought to you by Over the Bar. Again, this week it's myself, David, joined by our Ipswich fan, friend of the show, friend of the site, and co-host Ben. We've got plenty of big news to talk about. Plenty of results. We had Saturday and Tuesday games since we last broadcast to you guys. So we're going to jump straight into it. We'll do the usual recap of the scores, and then we'll jump into some bit of analysis of that. And there's a big breaking news story from League One today. We're going to start off with that in a second, but we'll run through the scores with you first. So starting off with Saturday's game. So we had Accrington 2, Sheffield Wednesday 3, Charlton 2, Plymouth 0, Cheltenham 2, Shrewsbury 1, Crewe 2, Gillingham 0, Doncaster 0, Lincoln 0, Fleetwood 1, Morecambe 2, MK Dons 1, Burton 0, Portsmouth 2, Wimbledon 1, Rotherham 3, Cambridge 1, Sunderland 2, Ipswich 0, Wigan and Oxford was postponed due to a COVID outbreak at Oxford, and Wycombe 1, Bolton 0. And then coming to last night's games, so we had Wimbledon 3, Crewe 2, Burton 4, Accrington 0, Cambridge 2, Wigan 2, Gillingham 0, Cheltenham 2, Ipswich 0, Rotherham 2, Lincoln 0, Portsmouth 3, Morecambe 2, Charlton 2, Oxford 3, Fleetwood 1, Plymouth 0, Wycombe 3, Sheffield Wednesday 2, MK Dons 1, Shrewsbury 1, Sunderland 1, and finally Bolton 3, Doncaster 0. Usually we start off with the teams towards the top end of the table. We're going to do it slightly different this week, just simply because of the breaking news from League One today. And that is the departure of Simon Grayson from Fleetwood Town. But the news broke this afternoon. It does look, the way the statement reads, if to say he was sacked rather than mutual consent. You never get the clear picture these days with these statements. But Fleetwood have got now without a manager 2 really disappointing defeats on Saturday and Tuesday. The away defeat at Oxford last night being Grayson's last game, and then the crunch game at the bottom end of the table when they lost at home 2-1 to Morecambe at the weekend. Ben, where do we start on this one? Are you shocked by the news, or do you think Grayson probably should have got a little bit more time? But yeah, what are your thoughts initially on the departure?
To be fair, I mean, Fleetwood haven't won in 8 games, which is absolutely ridiculous to think about, and that is absolutely appalling, regardless of who your manager is. I think we've been saying for quite a while that Grayson is a bit of an inconsistent manager, and he hasn't done well lately at whatever club he's been at. And I think that's very much been the same at Fleetwood. Now, if there are any Fleetwood fans in the comments, then let me know what the situation is behind in the boardroom. But as far as I'm concerned, they are not doing very well on the pitch at all. Last night's game against Oxford, we'll probably get onto that later on, but that was a game they really should have had a good go at, really, considering how many players Oxford had away from the starting 11. I think it was 13. I might be wrong, but I think it was that many. So Fleetwood really should have had a go last night, and ultimately they scored. I think Oxford scored first. They scored 2 first. And then what happened was that Fleetwood scored another. So they did try and at least come back into it, but they should have done better, really. And when you look at their squad as well, they have the players such as Joe Garner. Now, Joe Garner, Preston, Ipswich, he's played in Greece as well. He's a very good player. Max Clark as well. He used to play for Hull. He was a very highly rated player at Hull as well. So they do have some decent players at Fleetwood, including Danny Andrew, players who have previously played in the Championship and who should really be doing better than where they are at the moment in the table. Okay, this squad isn't perfect. There are, of course, holes in their squad, which I think everybody can kind of point out. But ultimately, I believe that Simon Grayson, should really be doing better than he should have done at Fleetwood. So is it a surprise to see him go? Not really. We both thought really that he should have gone earlier. So not really a real surprise. If there are any Fleetwood fans in the comments or even watching back on YouTube, let us know how you think your team have been doing. Well, it's fairly obvious how you think you've been doing, but let us know what you thought of Simon Grayson and whether he should have been sacked or not. Because as far as I'm aware, I reckon he should have been sacked and it was long coming. What do you think about it though, David?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. When you look at the league form, 5 defeats from the last 6 league games, when you look at the results in all competitions, no win in 9 games now, so it doesn't look good at all for Fleetwood. And I think the game with Morecambe, I think the defeat there, I think the writing was kind of on the wall for him after that one, personally anyway. And yeah, I think once that defeat hit home, I think a lot of Fleetwood fans, if they're to be honest, even the most passionate of Grayson in folk, I think they were probably wanting him out. And then last night, a depleted Oxford side, like I said, due to COVID, Fleetwood really should have gone after him a little bit more. They shouldn't have come away with a 3-1 defeat there. And yeah, I think it was the right time for Grayson to go. Like we said, he probably should have gone a few weeks ago. But yeah, the Fleetwood board have acted now. It was before we head into a busy Christmas period and all eyes on who's going to be the next appointment, which will be a really interesting one, really, won't it, Ben?
Yeah, it will be. And I think it's incredibly important for them as well because, you know, they do need to pick up results. Look, Fleetwood, they're not a massive team, but they're still a team that I think should really be doing better than they are because, again, they do have the squad to maybe climb a bit higher up the table, maybe mid-table. I don't think that's pushing for this squad. Maybe at the moment it is, but I genuinely think that they're better than they're currently doing. But yeah, December, and I think there is a bit of a pattern now in League One where December is going to be an incredibly important time of the year for certain clubs. Now, if you look at Fleetwood's fixture list in December, we're not going to count their next game against AFC Wimbledon when talking about this, but they're playing Fleetwood, Bolton, Gillingham, Morecambe, Shrewsbury, and Wigan. Now, I can at least pick 3 of those games out that they could maybe stand a chance of winning, maybe picking up the lucky draw. They're playing Gillingham, who aren't doing too well themselves, and they're also playing Accrington and Bolton, who, in my opinion, are inconsistent teams they could possibly snatch a point or maybe get a win from. So, you know, like December is an incredibly important time for this Fleetwood side. And again, I think it's going to be a huge test of the club's character, the players' characters. And ultimately, I think it could ultimately be a test for their interim manager, Craney, as well, because he's going to want to prove himself as well. Stephen Craney used to be a footballer, and he's actually been at Fleetwood for quite a long time in the back room, doing bits and bobs as a coach as well. So it's going to be a real test of his strength as well. But ultimately, yeah, December, huge month for Fleetwood. And I personally hope that they do well because it's never nice to see a team struggling both on and off the pitch.
Yeah, I'm just like when you started mentioning the fixtures, then you look at all the games between now and if you include Boxing Day's game against Shrewsbury, they're all very winnable games. And whoever comes in, I don't know how long Crane's going to be in the hot seat for, whether they've got someone in mind to bring in, but over the next few weeks, it's pivotal for Fleetwood season. If they can't get a good few wins in this period, I think that's them gone. Because when you look at the start to the new year, they've got, we'll include the Wigan game at the end of December. Then they've got an away trip to Sunderland, home ties against Plymouth, Rotherham, then away to Charlton. That is the start of their 2022. And yeah, if they don't get anything going in December, January doesn't hold up much hope for them either. But yeah, it's a bit of a difficult one with Fleetwood. I don't see them getting out of it, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. We'll carry on the focus at the bottom end of the table. We'll stick with rock bottom side Crewe. So they got a good win at the weekend on to Gillingham, but last night didn't really capitalise on that and get any momentum going. They lost away at Wimbledon 3-2, which isn't a bad it is a bad result really, but they give it a bit of a go there. So what have you made of Crewe over the last couple of games? Because it seems to slowly looking like they might be starting to improve him. 2 good performances really.
Yeah, Crewe played very long against Gillingham. Tom Lowy and Chris Long scored in the Gillingham game. And then in the game against FC Wimbledon, it was very much a back and forth game, maybe a game that this team maybe felt that they could have won. Crewe were the first team to score. They scored on the 11th minute, but for some reason they just collapsed from there. Jack Rudoni scored for FC Wimbledon, and then Ollie Palmer with a brace. So Crewe had a chance to pull it back, well, on the 89th minute, which may have been a bit late, really, but ultimately they made it 3-2. But what I take from these 2 games, if we're going to talk about these 2 games in like in context, I reckon it shows that this squad does have the capabilities of maybe pulling out the result here and there. I think it just shows that they do have character, that they are a capable squad, capable of fighting back and picking up the odd performing on the pitch as well. Is it enough to maybe keep them up? I'm not too sure, really. Gillingham are a team who are struggling as well. Some fans may argue that a win against Gillingham isn't really that impressive given where they are both financially and with Steve Evans as well. And we also talked about December. Well, if we're going to include next Sunday's game against Ipswich, Crew also have Lincoln, Sheffield Wednesday. They actually have Gillingham again on the 18th of December, Wigan and Morecambe. So they do have some very tough fixtures coming up. So we just talked about Fleetwood. Fleetwood have quite a favourable fixture list in December coming up. Crew haven't really. They've got some very tough games. So I'd be interested to see how they come out of December. Are they going to come out in bits? Are they going to come out on the back of a few losses, or are they going to come out off the back of a few surprise wins? Well, one can only hope, but December's going to be another really testing period for Crew. But ultimately, I reckon they do have character. As I said when talking about their win over Gillingham, they will be playing Gillingham again away from home. Maybe that is an opportunity for them to pick up some wins, but ultimately it's a long way off for this Crew side. What do you think about how Crew are doing, David?
Well, when I saw the win at the weekend, I was expecting to really push on. Thought the Wimbledon game was a bit more of an achievable. In terms of away games, I don't think it was the most difficult one. They could have had to follow it up. They give it a go, but ultimately the quality work there to get them over the line. And yeah, I still think Crew will be down in the bottom four at the end of the season, but there is signs there that they are going to put up a bit of a fight at this point of the season. But like I said, really tough run of fixtures coming up. So yeah, I think December could be a pivotal month for their hopes as well. Moving on to another team that really can't get any momentum going is Doncaster. So last week we started to not talk them up as like a bit of a resurrection going on, but there were signs of life that it wasn't as all bad as it seemed. But home draw with Lincoln at the weekend, and then they played a very much out of sorts Bolton last night and got battered 3-0. Do you think the writing's starting to be on the wall again for Doncaster? Because they just can't get any momentum going at all, can they?
Yeah, and they've really been struggling since Darren Moore has gone. I know he left quite a while ago in the context of things, but they haven't really picked up at all. And to be honest, Richie Wellens is struggling. I know we've had some people defend Richie Wellens, and they've actually given a legitimately good reason too. But if I was a Doncaster fan, then I'd maybe be giving him a few questions, because again, this is another team who should maybe be doing better than they should. Some people may not be surprised to see where they are at the moment considering last season, but ultimately this is a team who again should really be doing better. I think last night's result, to be honest, is the game to maybe concentrate on, because Bolton, as you said, Dave, are a team who are very much out of sorts at the moment. If you look at where they are in the league table, they are 11th, but they've been inconsistent, picking up a win, then a loss, then a win, vice versa. So Bolton have been very inconsistent. Ian Doyle, well, whenever you play Ian Doyle, I reckon you're guaranteed a goal. He scored last night. Kachunga did as well, and Thomason. Doncaster Rovers on the 43rd minute. Alowu, I might have butchered his name there, but he got sent off. Was a straight red, actually. So they were very much with 10 men for most of the game. They're not doing well at all at the moment. I would be incredibly concerned if I was them. Bolton, they have quite a few injuries at the moment, so maybe they could have capitalised on that as well, as Bolton were arguably the weaker team going into that game. But yeah, Richie Wellens, I think a few fans might be asking questions now. I think he's coming under a bit of pressure. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think he's been under pressure for a while. I think Doncaster, they're not a League Two club. They're solid League One, and they should be doing better than they are. And I know it's probably not the strongest squad they've had, but I think we've mentioned it quite a few times. They've just really failed to get out of that rut after Darren Moore went to Sheffield Wednesday, and they've just had that slide down the table. They've really struggled to get out of that rut, and I don't really see them getting out of it. To be fair, I think them and Crew, for me, are the only two certainties for the drop. Fleetwood, I'm giving them more of a chance, but yeah, I think Doncaster and Crew. I think by February, I think we can start to safely say they'll be playing for life in League Two next season. But I think it's going to take an incredible turn of fortunes, so I can't words out, for them to stop up anyway, because the quality's not there. Rich Wellens, even though we've been a bit harsh, I still think he's the greatest of managers. So, yeah, I'm not really holding out much hope for them there at all. The next team we're going to have a look at, a team not really discussed much over the last few weeks, but I know we had a bit of a period early on in the season where we discussed them in a bit of detail with Shrewsbury. They had a bit of a good run towards the back end of October, but a bit of a wobble as of late. An away defeat to Cheltenham at the weekend, and then a 1-1 draw with Sunderland last night, which is a good result for them, really. What are you making of Shrewsbury at the minute? Because they always seem to be the team that you can guarantee are always floating around like bottom 6 or 7 every season.
Yeah, well, they lost to Cheltenham on Saturday, and that was a game that they maybe should have had a chance at. And we've been saying this about a lot of teams, and I don't think it's any coincidence, really, because I think so many teams at the moment are just throwing away games that maybe they could have picked something up from. Because the game on Saturday, Shrewsbury scored first, and they were very much dominating early on in the game, and they failed to capitalise on that. The 1-1 draw against Sunderland, fantastic result for them, especially given the fact that they did get a red card on the stroke of half time. Do I think Steve Cotterill is under pressure? Not quite yet. I still think some people, some fans, including me, to be honest, will give him the benefit of the doubt, considering how ill he had been and the fact that he still might be finding his feet at that club. But look, this is a team who, again, should really be performing better. But when you look at their squad, then maybe you'd argue that it's not particularly strong enough for this league. And I think that is a fair assessment and a fair argument to have, really. December, of course, is another incredibly important period for them. And again, we've said this about so many teams, and I genuinely believe that December will more or less determine who might go down and who might stay up, because December's a very busy period, a very packed fixture list, and ultimately some teams will be tested. Their squad depth will be tested, and their character will be tested as well. I'm not going to read out all of Shrewsbury's fixtures coming up, but they're playing Charlton, who are doing really well under Johnny Jackson at the moment. Wigan, Doncaster and Cheltenham again could arguably be winnable games, but then they're also playing Fleetwood and Accrington, two teams who probably will be looking to get a win over them as well. So an interesting fixture list coming up for them in December, but again, they should really be doing better. But then again, I am torn, to be honest, on Shrewsbury, because when I look at their squad, I do kind of think that they're a solid League Two team. I don't really rate their squad, I'm afraid. And if you disagree with me, then fair enough, because, you know, they do have some very talented players as well. But the size of Shrewsbury and the fact that they were in the playoffs a few seasons ago, I still kind of see them as a solid League One team. I'm not sure why, but they shouldn't be where they are at the moment. So I'm not sure whether that's fair to say, David, but I'm wondering whether you have any thoughts on this Shrewsbury team and where they are at the moment.
Yeah, it's a bit of a difficult one with Shrewsbury, because I think they are the nearly men when it comes to relegation battle every single year. So, it is a tough one with Shrewsbury. I think, again, they'll be a team that are down in that bottom 6 or 7 come the end of the season. That's for sure. I don't see they've got the quality to climb away from it and be safe. But Steve Cotterill is a very good manager for this level, so yeah, I think he'll be doing all right. That's my personal opinion on that anyway. But there's a comment on the screen there from Ben Morris, a very tight league at both ends of the table. I said to you guys a couple of months back that I thought this was a league to take serious, so some of our fans didn't believe me. Enjoyable competition. Yeah. So in terms of your outlook on it, Ben, as a Sheffield Wednesday fan, so you guys are just floating around in that top 6 at the minute, aren't you? You've picked up as of late, but yeah, you've definitely had to work hard to get there, haven't you? Would you agree with that, Ben? Ben Morris's comment about the league being really tight?
Yeah, the league is incredibly tight. And the thing is, I think it's more or less a statement when you see teams that, had been on good form maybe back-to-back wins, suddenly go on a small run of losing games and then drop down the league. So I think the league is incredibly competitive. If you're towards the bottom of the league, then I think it's very difficult to climb out of the bottom half of the table. I just think that's how League One is at the moment. And I also think that the playoffs is incredibly tight as well, because as far as I'm concerned, any team from maybe 13th, 14th and above, if they go on a good run, could stand a chance of getting into the playoffs. That is just how tight this league is. But again, League One, in my opinion, and League Two are the two most exciting teams leagues, I mean, in England, because, like we have so many competitive teams, big teams coming down from the Championship, League One, teams who are wanting to prove themselves, teams who are struggling financially. I just think it's an incredibly exciting league to be in, really, especially as a spectator. So yeah, it's very, very tight, and it's actually very exciting. That's why I keep mentioning December, because December is going to be a very exciting time for plenty of clubs, especially the neutral.
Yeah, so the Christmas period in the FL is incredible, in it. Like the games come thick and fast. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens over that festive period. Anyway, I'm not going to really go into detail at Gillingham this week, just simply because we talked about them in quite a lot of depth last week, and there doesn't seem to be any movement on the Steve Evans situation. So we'll leave them for another week, and we'll see where they're up to next week. But I do want to focus on Morecambe. Two really good results. They've got that cracking away win at Fleetwood on Saturday, and a really good draw at home to Charlton last night. Well, an informed Charlton side, and Charlton were 2-0 up last night, and then Morecambe came back from 2 goals down to get the equaliser in that one. So what did you make of the performances of Morecambe over the weekend and last night?
I think we've said this before in the past. I think we've both said this, but I really like Stephen Robinson as a manager, and I like the way he set up at Morecambe. Okay, when you look at the league table at the moment, they may be 19th, but when you put it into perspective, they weren't necessarily a big fish in League Two. They're very small team, always hanging just up above the bottom four in that league. So, it's fantastic to see them doing well in League One. And to be honest, I consider 19th for Morecambe, and I don't mean this with any offence at all to any Morecambe fans in the chat, but I'd consider that a huge success for them, because again, they are a cracking young team. They're a team who aren't necessarily that big. They're a proper football team, if that makes sense. So for Morecambe, when you look at their last two games, they've actually done decently as of late, in my opinion. They beat Fleetwood 2-1, a fantastic game for them. Anthony Pilkington, who's a great player, I think. Well, he scored for Fleetwood. And then Callum Jones and Cole Stockton. I do rate Cole Stockton. He scored for Morecambe. So that was cracking for them. And of course, as you just mentioned, Morecambe 2, Charlton 2, Stockton scored again for Morecambe. Then O'Connor, I can't pronounce that name, Jesami. Tell me if I've butchered that name. I think I've absolutely butchered it. So sorry if you couldn't understand me, but that is a name. And then Connor Washington scored for Charlton. But yeah, this Morecambe side is a side that I really do rate. Like Cole Stockton is a player who we mention each and every week. He's a fantastic player, and they're going to be so lucky to keep hold of him in the summer, because he's going to be a man in demand. I reckon they might be able to keep hold of him in December if they give him a compelling reason to actually stay there. I reckon he will stay there. But come the summer, should Fleetwood still be in League One or maybe get relegated, he'll be a player in demand. But he has scored 13 goals this season. And for this Fleetwood side, that is incredibly impressive. But yeah, back to my initial points. Yeah, Fleetwood have been doing very well as of late. I do rate this Morecambe side. I rate their manager. Their manager's a cracking young manager who's gotten them playing some very good football. They have the perfect mix between experience and young players, which I think has really benefited them as well. And ultimately, if they finish 19th at the end of the season, I'd be thrilled to see that, because they do deserve to stay in League One. What do you think, David?
Yeah, just going back to your point about Stockton, I think they'll do well to keep hold of him in January. I think a few clubs will look at the situation. I know Stockton's not really been prolific prior to this season, but I think a few clubs might be tempted to take the risk on him come January if they do need the goals to. I think you're probably looking more teams bigger than Morecambe in a similar situation down towards the bottom might test and resolve. But yeah, I think he'll be there for the season. But yeah, currently the top scorer in the league, and I think Morecambe are doing really well at the minute. I think a lot of people wrote them off before a ball was kicked. So I think if you'd have offered any Morecambe fan the situation they're in at this stage of the season, I think I'm pretty certain they'd have taken that, to be fair. Just before, we're going to look at one other team in the relegation battle. But before we do, if you are new to the show and you are watching on Twitter, come over and watch us on YouTube. Just simply because the live chat feature we can't get working for some reason on Twitter. So if you are watching, you want to ask us some questions related to League One, head over to YouTube. We'll get them questions answered for you. And while you're there, just make sure you drop us a subscribe and like the videos. It's very much appreciated. Back to the League One action. So, like I said, the last team we'll have a look at towards the bottom end of the table is Accrington Stanley. So, they've really, really started to slide down the table quite dramatically. So, no wins in the last 5. 11 goals conceded in the last 3 games as well, which doesn't make for good reading. A side that's usually quite pragmatic at the back. So the 4-1 defeat home to Plymouth, a home defeat to Sheffield Wednesday 3-2, then losing away at Burton last night 4-0. So things are looking great at the minute for Accrington, are they, Ben?
No, it isn't at all, to be honest. And when you look at where they are in the league at the moment, they're another team who have unfortunately collapsed. And it's a shame to see, really, because they're 17th in League One at the moment. And as far as I'm concerned, they haven't won in 5 games. They've had 2 draws, 3 losses. So yeah, they're a team who have disappointingly collapsed. I thought their 4-0 loss against Burton was a very disappointing game, especially for them, as maybe they could have given it more of a go. Daniel Jefferson scored for Burton alongside with Johnny Smith. They both scored braces. But Burton absolutely dominated the game. They had 60% possession and had 18 shots, 7 on target. Whereas Accrington only had 8 shots, 2 on target, 40% possession. So, that is not great at all for Accrington. And when you look at their squad and how they've lined up, then again, maybe they should be doing better, because as far as I'm concerned, players like Harry Pell should really be doing better than they currently have been. Because as far as I'm concerned, Harry Pell is a bit of a coup for this Accrington side. But to be honest, am I surprised to see them here? Not really. They've never been a massive side in League One. I still think they're a very disappointing, difficult team, to go to. I think the Wycombe Stadium is a very difficult stadium to go to just because of its atmosphere and the size of the stadium. The fan base have a very good fan base as well. So, I never like going to the Wycombe Stadium as an Ipswich fan. And I also think that this team is a team capable of picking up the odd result here and there. So, it is very disappointing to see Accrington where they are at the moment. Do I think their manager is under pressure? Well, to be honest, John Coleman is a legend at Accrington. He's gotten them up the leagues. So I don't really think he's under pressure. I reckon he will turn it around. I reckon Accrington will turn it around. And ultimately, December will prove whether they can do that. And I reckon they can do that, as they are a good team and a very difficult team to break down, because a John Coleman side is always very difficult to break down, always very good defensively. And I reckon they just have enough quality to turn things around. Do you think I'm right in saying that, David?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think John Coleman's probably got a job for life there at Accrington. I think they probably need to be pushing towards the bottom end of League Two before they'd pull the plug on John Coleman. He's performed absolute miracles at club. Getting him into the Football League to start with, and then getting him into League One, it's an absolutely incredible achievement. In his second spell as well, no, he had that very short spell at Rochdale, which we won't really go into, but he's done a cracking job, and I think Accrington will turn it around. For me, there's no danger of them going down. There's definitely 4 worse sides of them in the league this year, so they'll be fine come the end of the season, I reckon.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's time to talk about the top half of League One, because the top half of League One, as we mentioned earlier, I think Ben Morris mentioned it in the live chat, it is very tough towards the top of League One. Now, a team who I would like to start off with is Rotherham, and begrudgingly so, because Rotherham beat my beloved Ipswich last night. Not a good game at all. I watched it. I was disappointed that I spent 10 quid on that, as it was a very poor game indeed. But we're not going to speak about Ipswich just yet. We're going to speak about Rotherham, because Rotherham at the moment are first in League One. They've been on an absolutely terrific run at the moment. I think they're undefeated in over 8 games. On Saturday, the 20th of November, past Saturday, they beat Cambridge 3-1. Cambridge are a good team, so a very good win for Rotherham. And yesterday, they beat Ipswich at Portman Road 2-0 as well. Now, first of all, David, I read on Twitter a few Rotherham fans calling this Rotherham side one of the best that they've seen in the last few years. Would you agree with that? And what is your assessment of Rotherham at the moment?
Yeah, you can't really disagree with the points made about Rotherham. When you look at the stats so far, they're the top scorers in League One. They've got the best defence in League One. So just that alone makes a great reading. And yeah, last night I was really impressed with that result. Sorry, Ben, beating your beloved Ipswich. They looked really impressive, and the stats back that up as well. They are looking very, very strong. I think you guys only get was it 1-2 shots on target at most, if I'm not mistaken. Rotherham were just in absolute control of that game, and they've got a really solid squad on paper. So even the summer they didn't go crazy, buying players left, right, and centre. They had faith in what they had, made a few good additions, and they really are looking good. So usually Rotherham, they are a bit of a yo-yo side, but they never look like they're going to win the league and whatnot. It's like playoffs, so just getting into the top 2. But yeah, they are looking very, very strong, and yeah, I think they'll definitely be in the mix for the top 2 at the end of the season.
So Rotherham, they've been doing incredibly well as of late, but a team who I wouldn't necessarily call it a collapse or a hiccup, but a team who have kind of struggled a bit as of late is Plymouth Argyle. Ryan Lowe has a fantastic team. I think we've been saying that week in, week out, and each and every week that team does perform. First of all, I want to wish Brendan Galloway all the best, because he did pick up an injury last night, quite a severe injury as well. He's a fantastic player, and it's never nice to see a player getting injured. But Plymouth, they've lost their last 2 games. They lost away at Charlton 2-0. But when you look at Charlton's side and how they're doing under Johnny Jackson, then maybe that is not an upset. Though last night they did lost to a very inconsistent Wycombe Wanderers 3-0. So would you be concerned after last night's results? Because Wycombe aren't doing too well at the moment, and this Plymouth side should really be beating them, judging by how they play on the pitch.
Yeah, I think it's the manner of the 2 defeats, which I think is more worrying for Plymouth. I think they could have excused the defeats if they looked like they were even in the games, but 2-0 and a 3-0, they've not even scored in any of those games. And Wycombe, with the form they were on, I know they beat Bolton to kind of get back on track, but yeah, I think it's disappointing. If you're a Plymouth fan, I'd be very disappointed in 2 results. The Charlton one, I was kind of expecting, just given the run that Charlton have been on under Johnny Jackson, like you were alluding to. But I think last night's the worrying one for me. I'm kind of, from a selfish point of view, I hope they keep that up, and like Wigan can get a result against them at the weekend. Because then they play Rochdale in the Cup the week after. So I'd be quite happy to see Plymouth going into that one on the back of some wretched form. So yeah, it's a tough game at the weekend again, on to Wigan. Not one that you want to be facing when you've just had 2 defeats back to back. So yeah, it'd be very interesting to see how they bounce back in that one. But yeah, I expect them to bounce back at some point. I'm just not sure it necessarily will be on Saturday against Wigan, because they're a good side as well.
Great show as always, lads, says Paul. Thank you very much. Of course, if you're in the comments, get involved, ask away your questions, give us your thoughts on how your team have been doing lately. We will read them out, on the chat. But lastly, and I'm going to ask one more question on Plymouth, because each and every week we always talk about how weak their bench is, the lack of depth that they have at their club. Do you reckon that their lack of depth is kind of shining through at the moment? You never like to see players getting injured, but they have picked up a few injuries as of late, and they are now having to play some backup players. So do you kind of think that that could ultimately affect them come the end of the season?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's the sides that are up there with the smaller squads. It's always going to be a struggle, isn't it? Once you get one or two going down, then you have to plug holes. You sometimes go with the square pegs in round holes situation, and yeah, I think it's when you look at the mixture of injuries and loss of form, a couple of players like Luke Jeffcott's now has not scored quite a few games. I think it's like 3 or 4 league games on the bounce. He's failed to find the net. So yeah, I think they'll be wanting to get back in on goal soon. Ryan Hardy, I think they'll be looking to him to step up and get banging in the goals again. So yeah, it's worrying for Plymouth, but I think they'll bounce back over the coming weeks anyway.
So we just spoke about Wycombe, and we said that Wycombe are incredibly inconsistent, and I'm still going to stick to what I said because I still think that they're a team who could really be performing better, judging by the squad that they have. But besides that, they are at the moment second in the table. They beat Bolton 1-0 at home, though it was a very close game. And then last night, they beat Plymouth away from home, as we just mentioned. 3-0. So, David, what's been happening at Wycombe? Because they've seemingly turned the tables a bit. They've seemingly, out of nowhere, picked up a few results.
Yeah, I think when I first saw they beat Bolton on Saturday, I didn't really want to get carried away with the Wycombe return hype simply because I don't want to say only Bolton, but Bolton have been on wretched form. So yeah, I think Wycombe getting a win there, it wasn't really something that makes you sit up and take notice. But the one last night away at Plymouth, I think that's one where you could start to say, right, this Wycombe side look like they're slowly getting back on track. It puts them right back in the thick of the automatic motion spots. So it takes them above Plymouth into second place. So yeah, things are looking a bit rosier for Wycombe again, aren't they, Ben?
Yeah, and again, I reckon this Wycombe side are very, very good. They have some very good players, such as Sam Vokes, who should really be banging in the goals for Wycombe. He did score last night against Plymouth, so hopefully he does start banging them in. But I just want to talk about 3 more teams, and then we'll go on to the questions. One of the teams I want to talk about is Wigan. Now, Wigan have been fairly inconsistent. They have lost one of their last 5, but considering how good this Wigan side are, then maybe that is slightly surprising to see. We talk about Plymouth every week, but Plymouth at the moment are 4th in the league table on 35 points. If they win their next game, then potentially they could go top. But what have you made of this Wigan side lately? And Liam Richardson, how well has he done so far at Wigan?
Yeah, he's done a cracking job, Antti. And I think personally, I was really shocked that they didn't beat Cambridge last night. No disrespect to Cambridge, but Wigan had the free slot on Saturday just simply because that game with Oxford didn't go ahead. So they were going into that game fresher last night. It did ruin their momentum a little bit, but going into last night, fresher legs, they should probably have beaten Cambridge. And yes, when you look at the grand scheme of things, getting a 2-2 draw after being down 2-0 with like 10 minutes to go, you can't really grumble too much. But when you look at the form of the teams going into it, I think we're going to be disappointed not to come away with the 3 points there. Would you agree with that, Ben, or do you think I'm being a bit harsh?
Yeah, I'd agree. And to be honest, I'd say you're spot on because, again, this Wigan side have probably or arguably got the best squad in the league. You know, they've got Jay Dunkley at the back, some very good players who should definitely be, playing very, very well. They have Callum Humphreys as well. He should really be banging the goals in, and you know him well from Rochdale. But another team who I want to talk about is Sunderland. And we've said this in the past, but we've previously called Lee Johnson Streaky Lee Johnson just because of how inconsistent his sides can be. It's not all bright and rosy at Sunderland still. They are still a team who have been very inconsistent. They beat Ipswich 2-0 at home. Cracking results, though Ipswich aren't doing too well at all at the moment. They will talk about Ipswich another week. Though last night they had a very unfortunate draw against Sunderland, especially against Shrewsbury, especially considering the fact that Shrewsbury were playing most of the match with 10 men. So with Sunderland, what has gone wrong for Lee Johnson? Because I know when you look at the league table, they're still up there. They're still in the playoffs. They still could potentially get promoted. But for some reason, things still aren't clicking for Lee Johnson. Why is that?
It's hard to put your finger on it with Sunderland. They got a good result at against Ipswich at the weekend. Then last night, faltering a game where they should really be winning at Shrewsbury. No disrespect to Shrewsbury, but coming on the back of that one, I think Sunderland probably would have expected to win that game last night. Again, if any Sunderland fans watching, just let me know what the mentality was like with the fan base last night going into that game. Were you expecting the win, or were you being a bit reserved? Personally, I expected you to win, and I was quite shocked to see you only come away with a draw in that one. But like you're saying, they're still in the mix. Sixth in the league, got a couple of games in hand in the teams above them. So if they win both of those, that puts them back into the top two. Obviously, depending on what Wigan do as well. But yeah, it's not all doom and gloom at Sunderland. I just think things are not clicking as much as they should do, because unlike Ipswich and Wigan over the summer, Sunderland's transfer activity wasn't on such a grand scale, so they should be more cohesive of a unit than some of the other teams around them.
Yeah, and I'd say that's spot on, to be fair, because again, Lee Johnson, don't get me wrong, is a very, very good manager. And if you do give him enough money, if you give him the backing and enough time, he will ultimately get Sunderland promoted. And I still reckon if they keep hold of him, because if he carries on being less consistent, then they might get rid of him. But if they keep hold of him, I reckon they will eventually get promoted. But Sunderland have been in League One for a long time. They really should be out of it by now, because they're far too big to be in this league. They're definitely a big fish in a small pond. But yeah, this is where Sunderland are at the moment. And yeah, I reckon they can still get into the automatics if they do go on a good run. But a team who I finally just want to end off with, and a team who are doing very, very well at the moment, and you've got to give Danny Cowley a bit of credit for how he's turned it around, is Pompey. Portsmouth have been doing incredibly well. They beat Lincoln City 3-0 away from home. Danny Cowley going back to his old stomping grounds. Harness, he's actually been in very good form lately, scored on the 55th minute plus 3 minutes, so out of time more or less. And then Hurst and then Hackett Fairchild sealed off the game for them. But as I just said, they're a team who are in very good form, a team who are picking up the wins and who are ultimately playing very good football, which is surprising given how we were criticising Danny Cowley's style of football. So, David, what have you made of Danny Cowley's Portsmouth? And do you reckon that this could be a resurgence for them?
Yeah, I think things are starting to finally click. Obviously, they had a bit of a turnover in the summer, didn't they, as well? Following the departure of Kenny Jackett, Carroll had a small chunk of games towards the back end of last season, but things are looking a lot better now for Portsmouth. So 13 points from the last 5 games makes them joint informed side in the division along with Rotherham and Oxford. So things are looking really good again for Portsmouth, like you said. Marcus Harness is a big part of that as well. Gavin Bazunu seems to be bringing his international form down to club level as well. Only conceding 2 goals in those last 5 games as well. So, yeah, it is starting to look a lot better for Portsmouth. But what do you think, Ben? Do you think Portsmouth is starting to find the form at the right time to climb into that top 6 contention?
Yeah, well, I do. And again, like Danny Cowley, I think we've said this before, but he's a very good manager. And initially, I thought that Portsmouth were the wrong club for him. And there isn't criticism of him as a manager, because I reckon at the right club, maybe a club similar to Lincoln, he'll do very, very well. And I reckon if he had stayed at Lincoln, then he'd probably have gotten them up to the Championship. But he's doing well at Portsmouth at the moment. He's gotten them playing some very good football, which is surprising considering the pressure that he was under. And it's funny, really, because, you know, he's gone from a manager who was under pressure, who the fans were calling for his head, to a manager who's now loved by the fans. He's doing very, very well at the club indeed. So, yeah, I am happy to see Portsmouth where they are at the moment. Danny Cowley is a great man and a great manager. And fingers crossed, they do have a strong end to the season, as long as they don't push Ipswich out of the playoffs, then I'd be happy. But finally, we're going to go into the questions. And David, take them away, because we do have some cracking questions this week on the show, don't we?
Yes, we've had quite a few good ones come in on Twitter in advance, so thank you for those. And there's been some cracking ones coming up in the live chat as well. So thank you very much for getting those in as we've been going as well. So we'll get through them as quickly as we can. So yeah, bear with us. So first one from Steve Tim. So we've just kind of been talking about Sunderland, but we'll kind of touch on it a little bit. Some Sunderland fans are saying Johnson out. Madness, a small group thought HMS Pistol League would set sail and we'd walk it. Although I think they were carried away. 5 defeats doesn't seem good enough to me. Is this going to be another disappointing season? What do you think on that one, Ben?
Yeah, to be fair, I think that is spot on. And I think the problem with Sunderland is that they're simply losing culture at the club. And I think the losing culture has been there, very similar to quite a few teams in the EFL, actually, who've had previous success in the Premiership. The losing culture just hasn't really been shaken off. Lee Johnson, I do reckon he's a good manager, but some could argue that his football is too negative. He sets up all wrong. He's probably a bit too defensive, given how good their squad is. So, yeah, I think he is under pressure. Is it too late for them maybe to go on a good run and get into the playoffs? No. If Lee Johnson does pull it around, which he's more than capable of doing, given his CV and how well he did at Bristol, then I reckon he can. I reckon there's still a team who will probably finish in the playoffs, to be honest. But yeah, as I said earlier on, like he's a manager who should really be doing better. He's a fantastic manager with a fantastic CV. And I can't really give you the definitive answers into what's going on there because, like I reckon a Sunderland fan could answer that. I reckon only Sunderland fans can tell us what exactly is going wrong at the club. So as always, if there is a Sunderland fan in the comments, let us know what is going wrong. But David, I'm just going to go on to you a minute. What do you think has gone wrong at Sunderland? Do you think it's the manager, or do you just think that it's the losing culture at the club?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably the losing culture. I think, without being sound like kicking a dog while it's down, but yeah, I think there's still a lot of players that are still around from the early League One days. I think they probably need to get shut off now, and I think it might take Lee Johnson a bit of time, but they'll definitely be top six, I reckon, this season. And also the playoffs will alter it. I don't think they'll get top two, personally, but yeah, I think they'll definitely top six, and obviously it's down to the look of the playoffs, isn't it? So. We had a question from Dan Green. What do you guys make of the sacking? We've already discussed Simon Grayson earlier on the show, Dan. So hopefully, with you being a Fleetwood fan, you were happy with the answers. We were providing our opinions on that one anyway. Heading over to the questions that have come in on the live chat. First one in from Gary Jones. Evening, gents. Here's a different question. I see people asking who's been the signing of the season, but there's been a couple. Who so far has been your sacking of the season? So which way are you going with that one, Ben? Who's been your sacking of the season so far in League One?
You know what? That is a very, very difficult question, and it's a question that I might not be able to answer, to be honest, because it's difficult just to go through all the teams and just to look through who has been sacked. But maybe Fleetwood getting rid of Simon Grayson, potentially that could be the sacking of the season. But I'm going to go with Charlton and the fact that they got rid of their manager. He wasn't doing very well at all, really. Nigel Adkins, is a fantastic manager. And Adkins at the right club again, he could do really well. He was doing well at Hull, although he left by mutual consent, even though he wasn't necessarily doing that badly. I just don't really think he was really the right type of manager to take over at Charlton. So I think he was potentially the sacking of the season just because of how well Johnny Jackson has done so far. I think it's a little more than a new manager bounce because Johnny Jackson is a very intelligent individual. He has the potential to be a fantastic manager. So for my sacking of the season, and you never like to see a manager lose his job, by the way, I'm going to say Nigel Adkins. And anyway, he's going to go to a club anyway soon. He's going to go to another big club because he is a good manager and a manager who ultimately will find his feet again in League One or the Championship. What do you think, David? Who would you say is the sacking of the season?
Yeah, as soon as you said Nigel Adkins, I was in 100% agreement with you. The run they've been on under Johnny Jackson's been fantastic, and given it's the same group of players that Adkins had as well, I think that's testament to the job that Johnny Jackson's done to be able to revitalise that squad, to get them to go again. So, yeah, I've been really impressed with Charlton under Johnny Jackson. That's definitely the best sack. I don't say the best sacking, but the most fortunate of the sacking so far, simply because of the way they've turned the fortunes around on that one. Next question is from Johnny. Hey, fellas, do you think Gareth Ainsworth gets enough credit for the job he's doing at Wycombe? Would you say he is, Ben?
In a way, no, but in a way, he's been there long enough for us fans to scrutinise him. He's been there long enough to justify the scrutiny, because he does play very defensive football, and he does play a very particular style of football that some fans may not like, some fans may not necessarily enjoy watching, and that isn't necessarily that pleasing on the eye. I'm not going to call it hoofball, but it's a very structured football, a type of football that does kind of emphasize on the defensive passages of play, especially counter-attacking football, and ultimately playing with the big man up top. Does he get enough credit? Yes, I think he does, because everybody loves Gareth Ainsworth. Everybody thinks that he's a fantastic manager, and so do I, to be honest. I think he's a cracking manager, and I reckon he'd be a good fit at any League One side, to be honest. So I don't think he's a manager who's had barely any credits, to be honest. I think he's always had the credit there, and I think he's always had the recognition that he has deserved. But at the same time, I'm not a big fan of his style of football, and I think that's okay to say, because you can appreciate a manager and enjoy a manager but not enjoy his football. I'm a firm believer in that, because I don't like his football at all. It's very much a negative style of football. That isn't a bad thing at all, because it has brought a lot of success at the club, and rightly so. They deserve the success. But as a manager and as a man manager as well, he is absolutely fantastic. He is 100% a class manager. Would you say that's fair to say, David, or would you say that he's a manager who should really be getting more credit than he deserves?
Yeah, I think, again, where it means say like disrespectful to Wycombe, but before Gareth Ainsworth came along, when you recall Wycombe last playing the second tier of English football, not in my lifetime that I can recall anyway. Again, I could be wrong there, but to get them up there, and then obviously put the fight up they did, they come back down, they're showing that same fight. They've not been as boring and bully ball like kind of football like they were last time at this level. 51 goals in their game so far in 19 league games, so they're not as boring as they used to be. The goals are kind of, with the exception last night, the goals are kind of dried up a little bit. But yeah, I think they're trying to shake off that tag off a little bit, but it's going to take time, I think, for the perception to change longer term about Wycombe. Next question in from Chris Saunders. Hi guys, what's happened to Lincoln this season? Total collapse compared to last year. Where do you want to start on that one, Ben? Because it's a bit of a complex one with Lincoln, really, and where it's all gone wrong.
Yeah, this is the reason why I didn't go into Lincoln earlier on, because we had that question in the chat, and thank you very much for the question. By the way, Lincoln City, they're a team who, under Michael Appleton, should again be doing a bit better. Now, I wish Michael Appleton all the best, because he isn't in the best of health at the moment, and you never like seeing that. I wish him the healthiest of recoveries. But ultimately, with that going on in the back scenes and with everything going on the pitch, I'm not really surprised to see where they are at the moment, because, you know, sometimes teams can have the off season, which sounds really bizarre, I know, but I reckon Lincoln do have a good excuse for it. But should they be doing better? Well, obviously they should, in my opinion. They're a team who have always been set up to play very good football, who actually previously under Appleton have played very good football as well, though losing 3-0 at home to Portsmouth, a Portsmouth side who last month weren't necessarily playing the best of football, as well as their last couple of results, because they have drawn quite a few games, then maybe you might be able to say that this is a team who are definitely underperforming. They do have players such as Chris Maguire, who we all know from Sunderland. He's getting on a bit now. Young players such as Teddy Bishop, who is struggling. He's had a lot of injuries in the past, and they bought him in knowing that he did have the injury record, and I think he has picked up a few niggles here and there, but he hasn't actually been away for that long. But he's yet to really hit the ground running as well. Ultimately, and this may be a very controversial opinion, but I don't think that their recruitment had been that good. I think they had a very poor summer, and that they recruited very poorly indeed. And that's no disrespect to the likes of Teddy Bishop at all. I just think that they've recruited a whole load of players who do have bad track records with injuries, as controversial as that sounds, and who have ultimately proved them otherwise, because they have, as I just said, picked up a few niggles here and there, but haven't actually missed a huge chunk of the season. But they haven't really been performing well at all. But to be honest, it's far more complex than that at Lincoln. I'm not sure what you think, David, but Lincoln are such a difficult team to analyse and look into, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think Lincoln last year, they got, I don't say lucky with the transfers, but everything just seemed to fall into place like perfectly for them. And I don't think they've replaced, like last year they relied heavily on the loan market. So like Brennan Johnson, Morgan Rogers, having them in from Forest and City, well, Manchester City. Also George Grant leaving for Peterborough, I believe. So yeah, they lost a lot of key players, and I don't think they've had the same fortune this year as they did it in the loan market, compared to last season anyway. So I've already covered Rotherham again, Dan. Sorry, it feels like both your questions have been covered earlier on in the show, so I do apologise for that. Just a bit of an off-topic question from Johnny. But you guys doing some shows from around the grounds now that restrictions are lifted, like an over the bar road show. So I think we kind of discussed this privately, haven't we, Ben, over like the last week or so. So I know you've planned on trying to go to Plymouth at some point, and I want to do it a little bit more at some point. I'm not going to do any shows from Rochdale games. That's like my relaxation time at the weekends and stuff. I don't really want to. I just want to enjoy the games and not bother people with a camera and things like that. So I won't be doing anything from a Rochdale game. But if it's an away game that's difficult to get to and there's anything local going on around me, I might visit. Like I've got like Wigan nearby, Bolton, Salford. Burnley's not too far away. So yeah, there could be a potential there for that. But yeah, what do you think on that one, Ben? Is it something you'd want to be doing, getting around to a few different grounds, talking to some more fans?
Yeah, I think it's something that I'd want to be doing. Financially, we've all been hit by COVID, so I'm not going to be able to go to every single game. Though, if there's a chance to maybe meet up at a game, maybe next year at some point in the future, or maybe to go to a few games and just cover their side of the story, maybe Plymouth for me locally, Portsmouth as well. I have family up there. Reading, maybe the Berkshire area, then I'll be more than happy to do that as it's something I enjoy. I will be going to see Ipswich quite a bit in December, so who knows, I might be doing something there for the channel. I do have a big interview coming up. I'm not sure whether I can spoil it yet, David, but I think I've told you, so I won't spoil it yet, but I do have a big interview coming up for the channel, which will be very exciting, and that I will hopefully be conducting at the Sunderland game when Ipswich are at home to Sunderland. But apart from that, who knows what the future will hold? David and I will probably talk behind the scenes should there be any possibilities, but I'd love to do anything like that. Football's a huge passion of mine, and if there's any excuse to talk about football, then, I'd happily take it, if that makes sense. So I'm not sure what you think about that, David, but we do have some exciting stuff coming up in the future. But at the moment, I don't think it's financially viable given where we've all been with COVID. So we might have to wait till next year.
Yeah, say like the finance side of things makes it a bit of a killer. And obviously, me and Ben living at opposite ends of the country as well. So, because I know Gary's put in a comment regarding getting together in a pub. It's something we'd love to do, but logistically, it's not that practical. But you never know. Never say never. It might change in the future. And like Ben's alluded to, he's got a cracking interview lined up for the Over the Bar channel. We'll keep that under wraps there for a bit longer. Especially it could be a little. Depending on like what date the Sunderland game is, it could be a Christmas treat for the loyal followers of the channel. So yeah, just make sure you keep an eye out on the Twitter at Over the Bar FB and also the YouTube channel. So again, if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe to get all the latest news regarding Ben's big interview that he's got coming up in December. But that is everything for this week, as always. So thank you very much for watching. I know there's some big games on the Champions League tonight, and we really appreciate you guys like wanting to follow some proper football as opposed to the Champions League. So we really appreciate the support. Spend the evening with us rather than watching like City and Liverpool and whatnot. We do appreciate it. But yeah, again, as always, thank you very much for joining us. The usual show wrap up. So again, if you're not very familiar with Over the Bar, where have you been, first of all? But yeah, we do have the website, otvfootball.net. All the new content that we get out there daily. Just make sure you check us out for all your football needs. We've got pretty much anything you want on there being covered. Also at Over the Bar FB for Twitter. Again, if you don't follow us, make sure you head over there, drop us a follow for all the new written content, video content, and all the little bits you feel like you might enjoy. If you are watching us on Twitter, whether live or catch up, that's the YouTube URL. Make sure you do come over to YouTube, drop us a subscribe for all the League One content. If you're a fan of League Two football, we get that covered every Thursdays as well, me and Ben. We're back on that with that now. So, yeah, if you want to hear me chat a load of rubbish at Rochdale and other teams in League Two, make sure you head over and drop us a subscribe on that. We've also got the Bundesliga show twice a week with Mark and Rory. So, yeah, make sure you check those guys out as well. But again, that's everything for this week. Thank you very much for sticking around, watching us. Questions, support, likes, and the such. And we'll see you all very, very soon. See you next week.